There we go.
Are we on YouTube?
I believe
We are
so.
live.
Okay, I will declare our meeting open and we are in session. I'll start with the acknowledgement of our homeland, and I have that close at hand here. I'd like to start our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homeland of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted and destroyed. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya. President's report. We had that in our packet. Do you have some comments to make as well, Marge?
Yeah, a couple of things have come up since then. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I would like to express our condolences. We had a loss at the college, a student named Crystal Jones. Unfortunately, this has been in the news quite a bit. Crystal was a victim of domestic violence. She was a student, criminal justice. She was a student worker in public safety. She had many, many friends, and we just are just heartbroken about this. So we just want to let her family, if anybody is listening, know that she's, our best thoughts and warm thoughts go out to all of them, and our condolences. We've had quite a month, as you all know, at the college. We literally turned our entire teaching and learning environment upside down, and we'll hear a lot about that later this evening. But we are on schedule to finish on time. I cannot thank all the volunteers. I can't thank the foundation enough. So many people came forward, and we'll talk about all of that. Of course, we had some sad times too. It was an excruciating decision to discontinue 1039 employees. We're going to continue to be working with those employees to help them with their transition. The shining stars, though, are the employees. Again, the faculty, the staff just rose to the occasion. Wonderful. So another good news is last month we talked about you gave the president, myself, authority to negotiate our agreement with Pacific University. So we did, and we signed it, and we officially have a partner. The construction will be going on over the next few months, and I would say by fall, for sure. We'd like to say by summer it'll be done, but by fall we'll have neighbors in the neighborhood. So we're going to do a more fancy, appropriate celebration in a few months. So for now, though, the agreement is signed and we're ready to roll. I also want to express some good news. I literally found out today. You're aware of our honor society. It's called PTK, and each college picks one of their PTK students and has them basically compete for our all-state team. Of that entire group of 17, one of our own students made an elite small group, and they will be celebrated over the next few weeks. So I'll get a bio on that student and hopefully have you be introduced. So finally, I just want to say, please, everybody who's listening, that our COVID-19 page has all the information. And as I leave you today, wash your hands, don't touch your face, stay 6 feet away, cover your cough, and stay home. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. So we'll do the statements from the audience, and then I'll have an item to add to the agenda. So okay. Deborah, are you ready with the statement?
I am. Hi, everyone. Hello, board members, President Hamilton, and members of the gallery. My name is Ava Everett. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am your current student body president. We cannot be short-sighted as we move forward during this pandemic. Lane is strong, Eugene is strong, Oregon is strong. Together, we will get through this, stepping on the challenges COVID-19 has levied at our feet. There are things we must handle immediately and things we must do going forward. Both can be served in a single step: reduce tuition. Many of our students are reaching out to us as elected representatives for leadership and guidance. Although we as students agreed with the tuition increase overall for this year, let us assess the situation we find ourselves in. As we all are respecting social distancing and working together to minimize the health and life toll impact of the virus, we need to be looking forward to what we as a local community want to become. Lane Community College has had to do heavy layoffs, closed many of its spaces, and taken powerful forward-thinking steps to deal with this crisis. However, I expect that we as a college community are not looking forward quite enough. Lane Community College has to be at the forefront of getting our students, our community, trained and equipped to be the force we need to rebuild and strive forward after we're through this crisis. Educational access and training is our way forward as a community, and the strength we cultivate in this time of need will pay us dividends as we examine all of the implications our local economies and families face. Though the college has reduced fees and students have elected to reduce their direct fee as well, with reduced income for many of our students, faculty, teachers, and former associates, keeping tuition at the same rate is untenable. The education and our ability to engage these people is barred by financial constraints now more than ever. Reduction in tuition helps all of our at-need groups. Many of us are now on unemployment, concerned about paying rent and sheltering in place. Engage, entreat, and invite us into the college. Though enrollment has declined due to the crisis, now more than ever, we need the light and hope education provides. It would be short-sighted not to prepare for these issues and constraints to continue for the next 12 to 18 months, far past this term. To build a better future for our families and communities, let us engage their minds and give them hope. Reducing tuition and increasing outreach is our path forward to increased enrollment in these uncertain times. Let us be the light, a shining example of reaching into our collective community lives, hearing their needs and embracing them. Let's transform lives through learning. Let us fully prove that community college is the people's college. Students deserve it. Lane County deserves it. Our future depends on it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for submitting the statement, Ava. Matt, you're muted. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to know who submitted the statement, please.
Ava Everett,
Thank you.
who's on my screen. I didn't realize that you were here, or we might have been able to let you read it. Thank you for submitting. So our agenda is in front of us, but I want to announce to everyone that we will add an item under the bond update area of the agenda. So Vice Chair Matt Keating will lead us through that. Next, I would like a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
I hear a motion from Matt.
Second.
Second sounded like Rosie. Was that you,
Yep.
Rosie? Okay.
Yep.
All in favor, please say aye. Or well, let's go to a roll call. Lisa?
I know this is the consent agenda, but do we have an opportunity to comment?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
May I do that before we do roll call?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'm supportive of passing the consent agenda. I just thought it was incredibly important to call out one item in the consent agenda, which is the FQHC, the Federally Qualified Health Center. For people who aren't aware of this happening, it will be the first FQHC outside of the Eugene-Springfield area in Lane County. And I think it's incredibly important. It'll provide primary care, dental care, mental health care, and substance abuse services in Cottage Grove at the current LCC building that we maintain in collaboration with multiple stakeholders and providers in the county. And we are voting in this consent agenda to authorize the president to enter to an agreement. And if our LCC bond passes, it will increase investments in this location so that we can create new educational opportunities for healthcare jobs. So I just wanted to call that out because I think it's such an important thing that LCC is doing in collaboration with the community in Cottage Grove.
Any other comments on the consent agenda? Okay, Don, I'll just go ahead and call the roll and you can keep track of it. Be sure to unmute yourself during the roll call. Lisa,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Melanie,
Aye.
Angela,
Aye.
and I am an I. Did I get everybody?
Nope.
Who'd I miss? Rosie? Oh, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. So that passes. We will go to the COVID-19 business continuity plan discussion. And I'm not sure who's up for that. Okay, Marge.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Paul to chime in a minute too, but basically throughout the past month, the college has been up, running, opened 8 to 5, teaching going on in primarily, obviously, online and remote Zoom methods, and things are going remarkably well. Once again, the faculty have really done an astounding job. I believe close to 60% of our faculty were already trained or had some knowledge, but they've come through, they're mentoring each other, they're holding sessions, webinars. It's really, for a college president, I have to say, I never thought in my lifetime I would see something like this, a complete paradigm shift of education in such a short time. So I just want to publicly thank our faculty, and then their classified staff who are supporting them. These folks are working, some of them literally 24/7. In particular, that IT department, I don't think they've had a nap yet. They are constantly on board to support everybody. So we are continuing to, as we get settled, we have to plan immediately for the next round though, because we are making decisions now for summer. And once again, I'll defer to Paul in a minute, but it looks like we're going to be continuing this through the summer. At best, I'm hoping we can lighten up a little bit with some of our clinicals and our labs, but it won't be much from everything that we're hearing at the state level and possibly at the national level. Our incident command team did an astounding job under Lisa Rupp and Laura Green. I can't thank them enough. They continue to meet several times a week to make sure we're on top of everything. Now the financials, I'll just give you a little bit about that. We'll talk about that when we go into some of our finance issues, but you keep hearing about monies coming down from the feds. It's true. Lane, we already know what we're estimated to get, a little over 3 million, but I will say this, they're very, very adamant to help the students. And we heard in our write-in public testimony, you know, that we need to put our students first, and that's true. So 50%, so 1.5 million will be relief directly to students. So right now we have a team working on how it would be distributed, you know, the mechanics, the operations, because as you know, we want to do this through an equity lens. It'll be credit and non-credit students. So we're quite excited to be able to get that money and distribute it to our students. Paul, do you want to add anything about academics?
No, I can just briefly, as you mentioned, you know, when in short order, the staff and faculty really rallied to help us move, you know, roughly 75% of our courses that weren't online, got them all moved into a remote setting. That's a little over 1,000 sections that we had to modify to be able to present to students in a way that they could have access to it. The only areas that we have any in-person instruction occurring are in those areas that were accepted from the executive order by Governor Brown, and that's all in the health professions for emergency workers, nursing, EMTs, paramedicine, medical assisting. We have some in-person hours scheduled later in the term for those this spring. Everything else we either moved online into a modified kind of remote offering. Some classes are having synchronous sessions via Zoom at their normally scheduled time. Most courses have managed to be able to complete by the end of the term. Those CTE classes that require at least some hours of hands-on training, we have reserved some of those hours and pushed them into summer. And our goal is to be able to, again, pending changes in the executive order, be able to have some kind of in-person instruction this summer, certainly maybe by later summer, to be able to meet some of those hours so that the students stay on track. Looks like we'll probably be doing a similar approach for summer. We already were really heavy in online in summer anyhow. It's just a matter of trying to adapt some of those courses that did have some face time or need some face time to be able to do that hands-on work. And again, pushing that as late in the summer as we can, so to increase the likelihood that we will be able to be on campus.
Questions, comments from the board? Melanie, go ahead.
So first, I did want to start by just, again, complimenting everybody at the college who's put these huge efforts into this. It is a crazy amount of work, and I think everybody here is really grateful for all of these efforts and successes that you've been able to have so far. So just a big thank you and congratulations on that, even though these are really, really challenging times. I just had a few quick follow-ups. You actually both did a good job in answering most of the questions that I had. What I have right now for the 1.5 million for the students out of the federal money, do you know when you're going to have that figured out for how that would be distributed?
So I can give you an update on where we are. We're in the middle of working out the fine details. As you're aware, the restrictions on this money are much more lax relative to other federal money to be able to give to students. So it can go to international students, it can go to undocumented students, it can go to non-credit students and credit students, and we're really trying to get it in the hands of the students that are impacted the most. Our allocation from the CARES Act will be right around 3 million, 1.5 million of it going to students. We'll be looking at partitioning it out by certain groups of students. We will have a veterans fund that people that are veterans will be able to apply to independently. We'll have an international fund. We'll have an ABSE, which is our basic skills non-credit and ESL fund. We also are looking at ways to try to use the money to get some of our students that are in college now to be able to matriculate into the campus as a regular LCC student. And then we're going to have general buckets of money that will be distributed to students by term, so spring, summer, and fall. And basically, the regulations want it to be as simple and streamlined as possible. We're asking for as little information as possible other than, are you a student? We have a common application we're going to be using that students can express the need on, and then we'll have a committee that will review all of it so that we don't get students, we don't want students basically applying under multiple parts of these funds, at least initially. We want to make sure that we can hit the maximal number of students. So we'll have a committee that will review those applications and prioritize them.
I think it's fair to say 2 weeks. Because even though Paul has a sense of how it's going to be distributed, we have to figure out the mechanics of distribution. Is it going to be a check, a debit card, a credit, etc.? And the second thing is there has to be an accountability of outcomes. So we want to set it up so that we can follow how the students do in school. Because the whole idea, when the feds give you money, they want to know it helped. And our best way of knowing it helped is they stayed, they retained. Because that's part of it. It's to give relief so that you can stay as a student. So we just need, and as much as Paul probably could turn this around in a week, we want to give ourselves a little more room so that we can then report what has to be reported out on this money.
And then I had one more follow-up question, just kind of on the enrollment. So is the enrollment chart later on, am I reading this right? We're down about 10% in our those are student credit hours on that chart?
Yeah, actually that number's in enrollments, but we are down right around 10% in credits and enrollments. That does not include College Now. That's just our tuition paying students that are listed there. And so it doesn't include non-credit or College Now. And you can see from that enrollment point, we can chat about it later if you want to as well, that, you know, as anticipated, where we took the heaviest hits, anywhere from 20 to 40% in enrollments were in the career technical education areas. I mean, thankfully, we managed to actually grow in some of the more general education transfer areas and the kind of large areas in math and writing and things like that. And that buffered that loss for us a little bit. We were anticipating 15% or so. We'll still see a little bit more movement over the next week or two. But the bulk of the movement has happened already. The last day to withdraw with a refund was Sunday, this past Sunday. So we've probably hit the biggest bulk that are going to drop, but we know that there always is some movement that occurs in weeks 3 and 4 of the term as well. So we anticipate a little bit more movement. Hopefully we can catch some of that up in the summer. We're looking to grow a little bit in the summer to be able to make up for some of those losses. We'll still be, you know, hurting from the CTE side with full hours, just simply because we need to have the hands-on in-person instruction.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.
Any other board questions, comments? Matt, go ahead. Your mute's on, Matt. On the screen, you got to go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for this, Paul. Thank you, Marge. My question revolves around students who may not have internet access or computers that are capable to fully participate. I guess anecdotally or even better quantitatively, if there's a number attached to students who just for whatever reason couldn't quite make that transition to a full online, and what did the college do, or what have we done, or what can we do to provide resources, especially considering you know, without a lot the libraries open or without access to public internet. Is there any steps in that you're considering, or anything that we've done well that we would want to duplicate for summer and for fall?
We did manage to distribute, I think right now we're up right around 300 laptops to students. We've done it in 2 different waves. We've pushed out in for requests solicited for students that needed technology. And we feel pretty comfortable that we've hit everybody at this point. Everybody should have interacted with their faculty. They should know, all of the faculty were instructed to, you know, let students know that, hey, look, there's a survey out there. Do the survey, let us identify what your needs are to help you be successful. So we feel pretty good that we've gotten technology in students' hands to allow them to be successful and to access. The harder part has been the access to high-speed internet, right? As you're aware, there's you don't have to get far out of the Eugene Springfield area where access to high-speed internet becomes quite a problem. And you know, we've done the best we can to create programming in ways that might allow students to have access. But if they're learning in an environment like we're having here for this board meeting, that's very difficult unless you have some kind of high-speed internet. So that's been our biggest challenge, you know, apart from, you know, providing students with other resources that they can use in the community. That's been our kind of our main goal, is to say, look, these are the places where there are you know, Wi-Fi hotspots around. They can come, they can study that. We've had students come, you know, park in the parking lot and gain access, but most of it, I think, has been in town where there are the free hotspots that they've been getting at. But that's been our hardest part, because even if we had hotspots to give to students, if they live remote enough, there's probably not good enough cell signal to be able to have the speed, the download speeds that are necessary to really be successful like this. So that has been a challenge. I don't know the number of students that we've lost as a result of that. We've done everything we can to try to minimize that, but I'm sure it's something. And so I think that that's just more incentive and urgency for us as a community, not just Lane Community College, but Eugene Springfield and Lane County as a community to really try to get that high-speed internet out to people that it can be accessible.
We do have an excellent best practice. And again, kudos to the IT department. They sent out a survey and they basically said to students, tell us what you need. And thousands, I mean thousands, I don't have the exact number of students replied with what they needed, and our IT department called every one of them. They either called them or they got them on email. So they personally responded, and I just think that was astounding. I was so happy to hear that they did that.
Okay, thank you, Marge. Any other comments? Thank you, Paul. Questions? Okay, I'm going to move us to the next agenda item. Thank you for the report. The informational bond, and I think we'll go ahead and get the report, Matt, then we'll go to your item.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We are 13 days out until ballots are mailed and just over a month away from Election Day. I know a couple of you probably know those numbers. We have the home stretch of the bond campaign right now, and we're trying to get as much information out to the public as we can. We have 4 town halls over the next few weeks, April 21st, April 30th, and 2 on May 9th. If you haven't heard them yet, we have radio commercials running, advertising the town halls. We have 2 mailers that will be going out. The first one was mailed either yesterday or today, so watch your mailboxes for that soon. The first mailer is promoting information on the bond website and also the town halls that are coming up. And then the second mailer that will follow has more information on it, similar to the insert that was in the Lane magazine that went out last month. For those of you in Eugene, maybe you saw last week, the Eugene Voters Guide came out and we were included in that. We will also be in the Lane County edition of the State Voters Guide that comes out a little closer to when ballots are mailed. And we have both a text messaging campaign and digital ads going that are strictly information as well. And so that's kind of an update on what we have going on there. I'm happy to answer any of the questions you may have.
Questions, comments from the board? I'm not seeing any hands.
You're making it
Thank
easy
you,
on
Brett.
me. Thank you.
Matt, do you want to walk us through the next item?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. This next item is being presented as a statement from the board, recognizing that the moment we're in, just 35 days out from an election in which Oregon voters will vote by mail, and our bond measure, of course, will be on the ballot. This particular statement, rebuilding our local economy and investing now for the long-term economic recovery as students return to LCC to retool, retrain, and re-enter the workforce. Lane Community College is the community's college. Now more than ever, an investment in LCC's workforce development program, public safety, technology delivery, and healthcare facilities are desperately needed. With voters' help, LCC will be there for recently unemployed residents seeking to return to the workforce. With voters' help, LCC will be a support network for our struggling small businesses. From nursing to medical office assistants to public safety, LCC is the primary starting point for many of our local healthcare workers and emergency first responders. We stand united in thanking our healthcare heroes and essential medical personnel working to keep our community healthy and safe. Further, the Board of Education understands the fear and economic uncertainty we all face as a community together. And we have great empathy for community members who have been recently furloughed or laid off from work. Now, recognizing the difficult time we're all in, only together will Lane Community College help put Lane County back to work. As the premier education partner, squarely focused on training the workforce that will rebuild our local economy after this planetary pandemic, LCC is the foundation for local career and technical education, CTE programs, for 2-year transfer education, and for workers in need of retooling. Lane County residents who have lost employment due to this pandemic will need retraining. Local employers, not just healthcare employers, but many others as well, will need qualified applicants as businesses restart, reopen, and reestablish themselves. But LCC needs vital investments to continue to train and educate local community members returning to sharpen their skills. As we expect an influx of recently laid off students of all ages, of all walks of life, we ask for voter support to help get our economy back on track. We, the Lane Community College Board of Education, urge a yes vote on Measure 20-306, yes for the LCC bond and the future workforce of Lane County.
So Matt is proposing that as a statement from the board. I emailed it to all the board members a little while ago. Angela, I just emailed it to your personal account because I wasn't sure if you had the, okay. So we would entertain a motion. I hear you, Rosie. Go ahead.
I'm not prepared to make a motion before commenting that there are a couple of grammatical smoothings I would like to be able to engage in if the author is open to that. And since I haven't had a chance really to read it before now, so I don't exactly know how to handle that.
Go ahead and say them.
Well, I'm not looking at it, but there was one sentence that started together Lane Community College. That's not grammatically accurate. So it'd be together somebody in Lane Community College. I'm not looking at it, so I can't tell you. I don't seem to have it, Mike, in my email.
Oh.
Did you send it to Lane email or to
I did. I
email?
sent it to Lane email.
Yeah, I don't have that on my screen.
All right. Okay. I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Go ahead, Angela.
I'm seeing it in board docs.
Oh, Donna did put it up there. That's right.
Yeah, I think somebody just put it up.
Where in board docs?
Under the informational bond update section. And I also have some sort of friendly adjustments that I'd like to.
Why don't you go ahead since you are ready to go, Angela?
The second to last paragraph, Lane County residents who've lost employment due to this pandemic will need retraining. I might suggest may need retraining. Many folks will be able to return to work when the businesses reopen.
I support that.
That's okay with that? Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, Mike. Rosie, it might have been the way I was reading the statement. The line is recognizing the difficult time we are all in. Only together will Lane Community College help put Lane County back to work. So I may have just flubbed my language in reading that. Nevertheless, if there are grammatical or Scrivener's errors, if we could approve this statement as a value statement and then send those to myself and Mike, I'm open to incorporating any grammatical changes that we may need to incorporate.
Go ahead, Rosie, and then Melanie.
Well, with that offer of openness to some smoothing, word smoothing, then I'm prepared to make a motion to support issuing such a statement.
Okay,
I don't want to do that until Melanie's had a chance to be heard.
Well, I'll wait for a second. Is there a second?
Second, this is Lisa.
I didn't make a motion.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I just said I'm prepared to make one
Okay.
after Melanie has heard.
Let's go, Melanie.
I mean, I can talk now or I can talk during discussion, whichever is fine. I feel like something's missing from it. So do you want me to do that now, Mike, or do you want?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So in reading it, one of the things that strikes me is, and I don't know where it fits. So if Rosie's going to take a stab at kind of smoothing, then she could probably figure out a way, if everybody agrees, to fit this in. But the sentence that says, We have great empathy for community members who have recently been furloughed or laid off from work. The first time I read that sentence, I thought that we were talking LCC employees who had been laid off. Then I reread it and I realized, no, we're probably talking about all employees within the community who have been impacted. I think it sounds, I think it's noticeable though. The board would be saying we have empathy for people who have been laid off when the college has laid off, you know, a large number of people. So something, maybe this is not the right language. I am not suggesting this language, but just kind of this concept where we could put something in there about the board supporting the college's decision to offer additional assistance to individuals from within the college community who have been impacted through layoffs or furloughs, I think would be a good part to add. I think it's a little noticeable if we don't recognize that we ourselves have participated in impacting our employees.
Go ahead, Rosie.
I think there's a way to do that without being a kind of a sledgehammer approach. So I would like to move that we approve issuing a statement to the effect that the board vice chair is recommending pending some messaging and grammatical smoothing.
Second, this is Lisa.
Who said, is that you, Lisa? Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, second.
Okay, is there further discussion? Okay, looks like we're ready to vote. So be ready to unmute. Lisa?
Aye.
Chelsea?
Aye.
Rosie?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you. Thanks for putting that together, Matt. I assume, Rosie, that you and Matt will have some conversation.
Happy to do that.
Thank you. Okay. I think the next item, a bond oversight committee. Who's on point for that? Is that Brett?
Yes, hello again, everyone. As you recall, at the February board meeting, the board discussed the inclusion of an independent oversight committee that would serve as an accountability aspect for the bond. You approved it and directed staff to come back at the March meeting to have a discussion. And with everything that took place following the February meeting, that agenda item was pushed to this month. So what was included in the board packet was, I believe, a draft that Rosie started on to kick off discussion at tonight's meeting. So with that background, I guess I will send it back your way, Mike, and see how folks want to proceed with this.
So Rosie, I think you were listed as sort of, did you have anything else you want to say? I know there's going to be discussion.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about what's been about how the proposal's been massaged a little bit, but I'm perfectly happy to let other board members comment first.
Okay, so let's go ahead and engage in conversation. Matt, you had your hand up, and then Lisa.
I'll defer to Lisa, and I'll
Go ahead, Lisa.
I'll park.
Are we going to make a motion before we have discussion?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chair, I would like to table this pending a committee created by the chair to put a little more. Well, I would just like to I would like to table this, and I'd like to explain why.
Rosie.
I'm not personally interested in tabling this because as part of our conversation with the Register Guard editorial board, we were actually queried about the details of this oversight committee. And the question was put to us, didn't we think it would be important for voters to understand exactly how such an oversight committee might be comprised and how it would function? what charge it would have. And so because of our bond measure pending, I personally would like to get as much information out to voters as possible. So I'm not personally interested in tabling this tonight.
Okay, Lisa, and then I'll step in.
I also am not interested in tabling this. I think this issue is very timely, and I would like to see us take action on it tonight.
Okay, Chelsea.
I had a comment, but I'm also not interested in tabling. I had a comment when I thought we were going to be continuing discussion, but related but unrelated. I thought that we were using the raise hands feature, and so I used that for Zoom. If we're using just our normal hands to raise, I'm fine with that. I just need to know which.
Yeah, we are. Hand
Okay.
raised.
Just normal hands then?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Then I'll hold my comment until we reach discussion. I am not interested in tabling this.
Okay, so Matt, do you are you willing to engage in conversation? My approach, and it doesn't matter to me whether we make a motion first or whether we just hash it out and then make a motion. I don't have a strong feeling about that. Why don't you comment, Matt?
Well, yeah, Mike, and I understand the concerns that have been shared in regards to the urgency. I just have great concern about the actual makeup of the body. A committee comprised of not more than 11 appointed members, 3 to 5 shall represent residents at large. We have 7 board members. 3 members shall represent district-based construction industry and or business. Doesn't reference anything about our community benefits agreement. 3 members shall represent the LCC community, including 1 faculty member, 1 classified staff, and 1 student. That's actually the only part of this proposal that I'm supportive of tonight. Unless this body recognizes or decides to adopt the fact that we have laypersons from our community, budget committee members who could very easily take on this oversight role with the addition of at least 3 members from the Lane community. But the way it's structured right now is not palatable, and hence why I requested that we would table it. We've already agreed, Mr. Chair, that we would have an oversight committee, and I concur with the concept of an oversight committee. I just have some issues with how this particular proposal is laid out in front of us tonight.
So I see you, Chelsea, you're in queue. I'd like to make a comment. I think my preference is to get a motion on the table in a second. I hear your concerns and things that you'd like to address, Matt. But I'd like to get a motion on the floor in a second and see if we can hash it out. I know that could be a little bit tricky, but I'd like to see if we might be able to do that. I've got Chelsea, then Rosie, then Lisa.
I can hold my comment until we get a motion on the floor and then a second. So I motion to, I don't have the language right in front of me. If someone has the language right in front of them to motion, I'll let them take it at. I'm looking at it now.
Okay, I've got Rosie. Lisa, looks like you've got a motion in mind. Go ahead, Lisa.
Rosie, do you have a motion? You were ahead of me. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Rosie.
Thank you. I would like to move that the board approve creation of an oversight committee to be formed using the guidelines contained in option 2 of the memorandum before the board this evening. Not more than 11 appointees, not specifically not members of the current Board of Education or Budget Committee of the college, but 3 to 5 members representing the district at large, 3 members representing the construction industry so that we have the benefit of that kind of expertise and experience on this oversight committee, and then the 3 members representing the college community. In my motion, I specifically suggest that this committee meet once annually. I think quarterly is overkill. There's not going to be anything to talk about on a quarterly basis, but once annually to receive a presentation about projects for the coming year and a progress report on projects from the previous year, and then all the rest of it as written.
Okay, before I call on the next people in line, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
I didn't wave your hand. Okay, thanks, Angela. So I've got Chelsea, then Lisa. Did you want to come back, Chelsea?
Yeah, so I agree with what Rosie has outlined. I was going to, I thought that the purpose of us having this on the agenda this time was to have a robust discussion about this proposal and to, you know, work out a few of the kinks in here. You know, this is now the second time that we've been asked to table this discussion, and I don't think that there's any more time to waste. The next time we meet will be after the election is over. So we need to be able to tell voters now what this oversight committee is actually going to be looking like. So I think that I thought that was the whole point of having this on the agenda. My only thought process is that I wonder, I mean, at this point in time, I think that having this group, this oversight committee meet once annually would be enough, but I wonder if there would be something that we could put in here, or if it would just be like a known agreement that if they find that they need to meet more than once a year, that that's a possibility. I just don't want that to have something be written in stone. If they find out, you know, if we're going along in this process and we discover that they would really benefit from meeting more often. That's one of my only concerns with this. But I mean, this is really the first time that we are moving forward with this. So I think that we have to move forward and try something, and then just be open to being flexible moving forward. You can't, you know, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, you know, with trying to like come up with the logistics of these sort of things.
Before I've got Lisa, then Brett. Before I do that, I want to make sure that Donna or Deborah know that Rosie made the motion and Angela seconded it.
Yeah,
so Lisa, then Brett.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. So I support option 2. I think it's very important that we have representation from faculty, classified, and students on this oversight committee. Those individuals are not included in our budget, our LCC budget committee. And I also think that it's really important that we have representation from the building trades. And if you notice farther down in the proposal, there is information about reflecting a broad cross-section, including age, economic status, diversity, and location. And that representation in that category, in that district-based construction, should include a diversity of functions, including tradespersons and contractors, architects and drafters and planning. So I think there is an emphasis on a diversity of individuals that we do not have in our typical LCC budget committee. I also agree with Rosie. I think quarterly is likely too frequently, but I also would be open to the potential for a second meeting during the year if that was felt to be needed. I don't know what the selection process will look like at this point, but I don't think we need to exclude a member of the budget committee. I feel like if somebody from the budget committee did want to apply for this, that we should consider them. But I'm not in favor of wholesale just adopting the LCC budget committee for this oversight.
I have Brett, then Matt, then Melanie.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind folks that when we approved, well, when you approved, the board approved the sentence for the bond explanatory statement that's published in the voters pamphlet that's coming out. We said that the independent group of citizens from the community will review quarterly reports and audits of how the bond dollars are being spent. I mean, and you could play with that and just say they'll meet twice a year to look at the quarterly reports that we prepare. But I think that the voters, when they read the sentence, that it looks like we did say that they'll meet quarterly. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Got Matt and Melanie.
Thank you, Mike. Just to be clear, there are elements of the second option that I liked and would have preferred some sort of hybrid between the two. When I see something like 3 members shall represent district-based construction industry and or business, it omits any reference to public safety. It omits any reference to the healthcare industry. Both will be impacted, and both should have a say in how these dollars are spent on campus. The 3 to 5 at large members, I remind colleagues there are 7 of us, and it just seems a little curious that with 7 board members that there's a magic number of 3 to 5 of these community members at large. I understand that the board will be receiving applications for somewhere between 5 and or let's say 5 to 9, I guess, of these, or 6 to 9 of these positions, since 3 of them will be appointed. But it's not the most palatable. I will stand with you if this is the will of the board, underscoring that our trades persons, our building trades are referenced here. There's really no overt reference to the community benefits agreement, but our trades are called out, and it does do an adequate, not great, but it does an adequate job of recognizing diversity. So I don't want to gum this up tonight. I've said my piece. I would prefer that we would create this committee after the election and sharpen our pencil. But for the sake of moving this forward, and for the sake of getting this bond passed, and to recognize the work that was put into this, I will stand with the board if it's the board's will to pass this tonight.
I have Melanie, then me in the queue.
Okay. I kind of, when I read this last night, I actually kind of liked what Matt was just saying in an approach where it's like a hybrid of the 2 options. I do think that there's value in having some of our budget committee members on, because they have a little bit more in-depth knowledge about the college than some of the general public would. I totally agree. It should not just be the budget committee that is on here. So I don't think option 1 by itself works. But I do kind of like the idea of, as opposed to saying 3 to 5 represent residents at large, you could have 2 members representing from our budget committee, and members representing the residents at large. Just because I really do think there is value in having that representation on this group. And then for the timeline for how often they meet, perhaps it could say something like shall meet no less than once per year for a certain duration. And then that might work to address Rosie's concern, and then also not be in conflict with the quarterly review that we had voted on previously. So those are kind of my suggestions, as we add 2 budget committee members, and then we go to no less than once per year.
Thanks, Melanie. We'll come back to that suggestion that Melanie raised. I want to just bounce off of people. My understanding of the function of the committee is not to recommend the bond projects. It's more to confirm with the public that the college is doing what we said we were going to do. Is that, can I get a thumbs up from people if that's your general? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page. Rosie, Melanie had an idea. How does that hit you? You made the motion.
I'm not interested in modifying the motion at this point. I feel personally very strongly that the credibility of this oversight committee will be in direct proportion to the degree to which the individuals that participate on this committee are not somehow in the Lane Community College loop, as it were. It's a concession on my part to even have faculty, students, and staff on this committee, because I think the reason an elected body chooses to create an external oversight committee like this is to lend credibility in the eyes of voters that the college is doing what it said it would do with the money it's granted by its constituents in the district. And so I'm real concerned to the degree that the board might choose to internalize on some basis, even to the point of adding budget committee members. Those persons are viewed as in the Lane family, as it were. And so, like I say, it's a concession on my part to include representatives of faculty, students, and staff. In my view, that's even going a bit overboard. But I agree to that because my sense is that it's viewed as desirable. But I really encourage the board to take the view of the cynical, questioning taxpayer who wants to know their tax dollars are being spent properly, being spent for what they were told they would be spent on, and that there are outsiders who come in on some regular basis and who are not somehow, what's the right verb for co-opted into the enthusiasm for the college that we all share, that our budget committee members share, and that will take that separate view. This is how the city of Eugene was able to be successful with its first road bond. They agreed to have outside experts look at the project list and measure progress on the project list and compare whether the work done lined up with the project list. So that's really kind of where my perspective came from.
Mike, you're on mute.
Thanks. I'll insert myself here. I've got Lisa, then Matt. Rosie, the
I had my
specific
hand raised
question.
too.
Say again?
I had my hand raised as well.
Chelsea, okay. The specific question that I recall Melanie raising was the idea of saying they would meet not less than a year. It didn't really have, am I right, Melanie? Was that one of the specific things you were trying to suggest?
Yeah, I had two. One was adding 2 budget committee members. I think Rosie made a very good argument, so I'm okay dropping that. And then the second one was changing the timeline in the motion, so it's no less than once per year language.
So why don't you give that?
I'm okay with that timeline modification.
You're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's go back to the queue. I got Lisa, Matt, Chelsea.
So I guess I wanted to suggest that maybe we discuss the easy thing, which is the timeline first, and see if we can get a decision on that and move forward. I wanted to say that I support the language that Melanie recommended, but I want us to make sure that we're in alignment with what we have in the voters pamphlet, and that the members of this oversight committee are reviewing quarterly statements, regardless of how frequently they meet.
You're on mute again, Mike.
I'm sorry. Brett, does the not less than once a year meet what we promised in the voters pamphlet?
In the voters pamphlet, it just promises that the committee will review quarterly reports. So you can, I think if we prepared quarterly reports and mailed them to the committee members, that meets the requirement of that. And then we would bring them together once or twice a year to convene. I agree with you. I don't think that there's always going to be a need to pull folks together. Bond projects come in batches. And so sometimes we'll be a lot busier than other times.
So unless somebody wants to make a specific comment on this timeline question, Matt, you do? Okay, you're next.
No, no, I just wanted to make sure I was in the queue.
You are. I've got Matt, Chelsea, and Angela in the queue. Before I go back to the queue, I'd like to get a thumbs up on the not less than a year idea language. Is there anybody that's got a thumbs down? Okay, so we're kind of setting that one aside. Matt, you're next, and then Chelsea, and then Angela.
Yeah, so my question revolves around it's a perception question. The argument has been made in regards to the perception of bringing folks who are outside of the campus orbit or outside of appointed members of a budget committee from an elected body. But I have perception concerns about members of this committee coming from the construction industry who may be bidding for construction gigs. So I don't know, nothing in here says that the makeup will include or preclude members of the local construction community who aren't actually bidding to be part of spending bond dollars. So I just have too many questions. And so Rosie, maybe you could address those, because I just want some clarification when we're calling out a certain industry. And I know it says and or business, and I appreciate that. But there are industries that are not recognized. And do we want industries that are intimately involved in spending these public dollars? And do we want to preclude participation because someone may be participating in an oversight committee, but also may be going out for a contract bid?
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to go back to the queue in a second. And then Rosie, I'm going to ask you to think about a conflict of interest kind of approach that we would want to introduce into this. Next on the queue is Chelsea, then Angela.
Yeah, my comment's a little moot at this point since the conversation has evolved. I just wanted to say that I'm in agreement with Rosie around this being, folks from outside the community. And also I just wanted to make the comment as well that, our budget committee members didn't sign up to be on an advisory committee when we appointed them. And I think that they would be welcome to apply. But, if I were someone that said, was on this budget committee and then I was being told, well, now you're de facto on this advisory committee as well, it would kind of make I would question that a little bit. So that was my only comment, in addition to being supportive of the comments that Rosie was making.
Thanks, Chelsea. I've got Angela, and then I'll come back to you, Rosie.
My comment was going to be about timeline, which we've handled.
Okay.
I did want, though, to sort of take up the question of what Rosie is going to address. I, for one, am struggling to see how I guess I don't see a conflict of interest potential when the questions that these folks will be asked to answer is the college doing projects that are in line with what the college said they were going to do. I don't see how what that has to do with sort of the bidding process.
Okay.
So I'm confused about that. I'm looking forward to Rosie's response.
Okay, Rosie, have you thought about it?
Yeah, and I think it's fair to have the concern that Matt has articulated. I guess I wouldn't want a third of an oversight committee to comprise individuals who stand in direct line to benefit from something. Although, when we think about the role of this committee, it's not like they'll have any power to do anything. They'll either say yes, they'll either review progress on projects and say, yeah, that matches up with what you said you were going to do, or no, that doesn't match up with what you said you were going to do. So I think Chelsea's actually probably write about it. Certainly, you know, once we've agreed that having some members of this oversight committee who have credentials to be reviewing progress on capital improvement projects, perhaps more precisely than your average citizen, I suppose we could consider whether or not we want to put a conflict of interest clause in how we interview, or we might even want to ask that as a question in an interview process. If someone in the district who were to apply to be appointed to this oversight committee who represents a real significant potential bidder on those capital improvement projects, we might pose that question. You know, how do you reconcile the potential for a conflict of interest? But I don't want us to overcomplicate this. I think the board just needs to do what is in the best interest of the college. And since this oversight committee will have utterly no power to do anything other than report to the board on whether or not the list of projects that the college has pursued in the past year matches the list of projects that the college promised it would pursue, I don't think we have too much reason to be overly concerned.
Thanks. Lisa.
Yes, I agree with both Angela and Rosie. I do not think this oversight committee will be making any decisions about how money is spent. Though I am also assuming that because it is a public committee, that they are likely governed by ethics law as well. I'm assuming our budget committee has some of that as well. I don't think it would hurt to, I don't think we have to put anything in the writing, but you know, when we're in the process of finding people for this committee, I think it doesn't hurt to have that conversation and to give people information about ethics guidelines. I don't know if Randy has anything to say about it.
Yeah, so what I suggest doing is we have a large public client that has a bond committee, and instead of putting it in the charter, I suggest that I send the relevant documentation from this other client de-identified to Brett, and that the committee adopt it, or that the college just decide to follow the conflict of interest guidelines that this other large public entity has decided to follow. They're very straightforward, and they talk about avoidance of financial gain related to any contract funded by bond proceeds or any construction project which will benefit the committee members outside employment. So there's some really simple language in addition to what's provided in the government ethics law that you all can after review by staff, you all can use to guide your decision-making when you select members of the committee.
Thanks,
Great.
Randy, that's helpful.
So I'm hearing from Randy that we do not need to put it into this action document tonight, but that we can address that issue as we move forward in implementation. And so I'm very satisfied by that. And I would also like to say that in talking to members in the community, I can't overemphasize what Rosie said earlier, that there is a certain sector of our community that when they have heard that we were going to entertain an oversight committee, that really resonated with them and moved them from being undecided to being supportive of this bond measure. And so I think that because we are talking about something that is external, so I would like for us to stick with the option 2, the way it's written. And I think that we can also think about who we could invite to apply to this. And Matt, I think your idea of having a healthcare professional sit on this is a great one. I think we all know that, you know, we haven't had people knocking our doors down to get on the LCC budget committee. So we will have to be proactive in getting people to sit on this committee. So I'd like to support the way that it is written in option 2.
Okay, it seems to me that we're ready to vote. If we vote yes, it will be with the understanding that Randy will provide this document. The administration will look it over and make a recommendation to us that we incorporate that as our part of our selection process. I think I'll just go ahead and call the roll unless there's any other comment. Go ahead, Melanie. You're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just hoping we could summarize exactly what we're voting on. So what I understand we're voting on is option 2 with language that says they will meet no less than once per year, and that we understand they will also get quarterly updates from the college to review. Is that correct? Okay.
That's my understanding. Everybody's, Matt, you got your hand up. Or is that, you're just saying you agree? Okay. He agrees. Okay.
Mike, I had a comment. That's why.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just thought of it. Melanie's comment got me thinking. It's not listed in here, although with the exception, well, I guess it says location in district. Similar to our budget committee members, there's nothing cemented that says those budget committee members need to come from our respective zones, but it's been an accepted practice. So I think a lot of the conversation tonight, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse, but a lot of the conversation tonight could crop up again, and I hope it does when we do our interview process. And I would just ask that there's some geographic diversity as well throughout Lane County, and so each one of our respective zones are ultimately represented. But I'm willing to stand with the body tonight and move this thing across the finish line.
Thanks. Okay, I am going to call the roll. Lisa. I'm reading your lips. It looks like you said aye.
Aye.
Chelsea.
Aye.
Rosie.
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Melanie.
Aye.
Angela.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Did I get everybody? Okay. Thank you for that good conversation. And the next item on the agenda is budget projection discussion. Zach, you're up.
Yep. All right. I'm making sure my video works. Can you hear me too?
Yes.
Okay. So President Hamilton and Provost Jarrell kind of hit a lot of the highlights that I had in the 4/15/20 budget narrative, but I wanted to correct a few things. So the budget office, with support across campus, President's office, HR, college finance, and our academic departments, we are tracking and evaluating the financial impact of COVID on our current operations. So we have a team together that's tracking expenditures that we're making, as well as analyzing lost revenue from this. So at the time that I wrote the report, spring term enrollment was about 3% down compared to last year. As Paul mentioned previously, as of Monday of this week, it was almost 10% down. So there's a little bit of a shift from what I had in the report versus what the current information is. The next section of that report goes into a little high-level detail of the CARES Act. When the report was written, the preliminary estimate that LCC received was $3.3 million from that. It was revised late last week in a report from the Department of Education. That's about $3 million. And as President Hamilton mentioned earlier, 50% of that is dedicated to financial grants to students. The next section of this, I kind of went into a little bit of the economic environment and what the impact of that could be on our budget next year. A recent survey of Oregon Community College business officers, they were asked.
I have a question.
Yep.
Can
Go
I
ahead, Rosie.
can I ask my question?
Go ahead.
I wasn't sure if Zach wanted to try and take questions in the middle. I'll go ahead. My question is, of that $1.5 million that's supposed to go directly to students, is that money, are they required to spend that on educational expenses, or can they spend it on anything? So Paul's shaking his head, no, they don't have to spend it on education. So really what that means is Lane isn't receiving $3 million.
Correct.
We're receiving $1.5 million, maybe.
That's right.
Right.
There's no guarantee we'll see any of that other $1.5 million.
No, and in fact, the legislation is pretty clear that it is really to meet the needs of the financial needs of the students in general. I mean, they even call out housing and food and those kinds of insecurities. So it's not that it's to pay their tuition, although they can choose to do that if they want, and it doesn't count against their financial aid either, really. So it's supposed to really help out in that regard.
And in all probability, it has no impact on their $1,200 check either.
Melanie, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, so that's exactly right. I mean, the 1.5 million may or may not end up back with us, but I think part of the theory behind it is to help our dropping enrollments. So hopefully we can keep more students retained in ways that we would not have been able to if they did not have access to that 1.5 million. So hopefully it will help kind of stabilize enrollments a little bit more than if we had not received that money.
If they spend it on tuition.
Well,
No.
or stay in school. I mean, in general, one of the biggest things that impacts our students the most in their retention, if you ask it, it is some kind of financial hardship that hits, right? And especially with our population. So the idea behind the money for us is that it lessens that kind of external stress that might be out there, so that a student can stay more engaged in college, so that because they're not worrying about where their meal is or whatever. And of course, we all recognize that it's a drop in their rent. It's a drop in the bucket for what their true needs are, obviously, but it does help. And the idea is that would help mitigate that need to drop out, or the stresses that come along with the financial insecurities.
Thank you.
So I've got Angela, then we'll go back to Zach.
I don't know if this is necessarily super relevant to this, but the 1.5 million directly to students reminded me of a question I meant to ask earlier, which is that current students who are currently enrolled in spring term, or is it students who were enrolled in winter term and then perhaps dropped out in spring term?
It would be students enrolled in whichever term we're administering that particular aid, right? So if we decide to split it over 3 terms, say spring, summer, and fall, we have a year to distribute the money. And if we do it in a particular term, it would be students that are enrolled in that particular term, whether or not they were students with us in spring when this started.
So it's not going to help students who have already experienced so much financial hardship that they've dropped out?
Not unless they return to us and are currently enrolled.
Guidelines are clear. There's no retro in any of this process. We cannot go backwards. We can only go present and forward.
Got Matt, then back to Zach. You're on mute, Zach, or Matt.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Gotcha.
It was about a week ago. I had communicated with Provost Jarrell and with Dr. Hamilton in regards to a concept that was suggested to me by a Lane Community College community member, and it was a concept to offer up to 4 or 5 tuition hours, essentially one class complimentary for any recently furloughed or recently laid off community member, or across the board for anyone who wanted to just dip their toe into the collegiate experience and return to school. And it was impressed upon me that just didn't pencil out. And I'm wondering if these new federal dollars help us get there, and if not, if the board would be open to conversations with lawmakers to potentially explore expanding Oregon Promise to address attracting a cohort that has some real need to retool and to retrain and then to re-enter the workforce.
So how about if we think about that and then let Zach go back to his report, and we'll come back for discussion.
Okay, thank you. So we surveyed Oregon Community College business officers, and everyone that responded said that they are moving forward with the Community College Support Fund at the level it's funded with this biennium. Their planning has been built on that funding level. They've already are almost through their cycles, so that's what they're sticking with. And I recommend that we do the same. The next section of this update talks about supplemental budgets. So if something significant does happen, we can always follow the supplemental budget process and adjust when more information is known. The second attachment to this update is we put together some virus budget impact scenarios on the general fund. As more information is coming in, we seem to be gravitating closer to scenario 1, which is good news because when we originally put this together, we had thrown around potential impacts of closer to scenario 3. So the good news is in this situation, we're closer to scenario 1. We were already anticipating or projecting a operating deficit in the general fund before this happened. So if we gravitate a little bit towards scenario 1, there'll be a greater deficit in the general fund. And then the chart at the bottom, the orange line is the estimated target to adhere to the general fund balance policy. And the column or the box chart shows where the estimated ending fund balance would be under each scenario.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Zach, I was hoping you could repeat what you said before you mentioned the supplemental budget, that you said we were going to, most colleges are continuing with the budget that they had forecasted based on what we're hearing from the state legislature. And so that's what you're recommending moving forward, or did you say continuing with the projections? Because my understanding is that we're going to get a budget report here in May.
Yeah, so we're too far along in the process and there's too much uncertainty with the Oregon economy to really know what the state legislature will do to the budget next year. So all of the other colleges that answered the survey, they're moving forward with the current service level of funding that was provided this biennium, and then are going to make adjustments as soon as new information is available.
Okay,
so I recommend that we do, yeah.
So Kurt, you said current service level. So you're a little garbled sometimes for me hearing, and I was looking for a current service level. Thank you.
Other questions, comments from the board? Go ahead, Melanie.
So I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. So in the scenarios at the top where it's got the 15, 20, 25%, and it says decline in overall enrollment, is that just the decline for spring term? Is that what that means?
Yeah, so it would be a decline in overall enrollment for the term. But when we did this, we weighted the declines because it's the last term of the fiscal year.
Okay. And then what year does summer fall into? Does that fall into 1920 or does that fall into 2021?
Next year, 2021.
Next year? Okay. Yeah, those were my questions. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Rosie. You're on mute, Rosie.
Thank you for telling me. My question is that the board docs memo says this is an action item. What is the action the board is being asked to take?
Marge or Zach?
I'm looking at the,
No, it's just, I think
It's a discussion item.
no, this is
Yeah,
supposed to be a
it's a
discussion. I went back to look at the agenda. I apologize. That's an error. It's discussion, it's information giving.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the board? Okay, I think we may be ready to go on to the student. Oh, Melanie,
Got a
go
question.
ahead.
I'm sorry, I had one more pop up. Is there I'm assuming in the May meeting, we'll get more information on kind of the other fund balances and how they are being impacted a little bit in more detail besides just kind of our general fund. Would that be in May? We'll get some more on that.
You can put that together.
Okay.
Yeah, we know that all of our auxiliary operations are taking a revenue hit, so we can put that together.
Okay, thanks.
Lisa, go ahead.
And I'm assuming that we're moving forward with the same schedule that we had already. We're meeting the 1st, 3rd, and 4th Wednesday in May for budget meetings. And I'm curious if we have any update on how we're going to do the public comment period. Public comment.
So
To answer your first question, yes,
Go
it's
ahead.
still the same dates
Great.
that you had mentioned, and I will defer to Marge or Brett, President Hamilton or Brett.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Brett will be on next, but I believe we're gonna go to the webinar feature of Zoom, Brett, is that correct?
Yeah, we've been using the, excuse me, we've been using the Zoom webinar feature for some town hall meetings on campus, and it's a great tool. What it allows us to do, obviously, with all the, I'm sure you've heard in the news, Zoom bombing's a thing. And so you have to take precautions to make sure you don't get a lot of obscenities and weird things thrown your way with live meetings. But the webinar feature allows us to have members of the public join us for live meetings and provide public comment by audio. You won't see video, but they are able to give audio, and when people are also able to join by calling in on telephones. So we'll post all of the instructions for that on the college website, and we'll probably schedule a time just for the board and budget committee to practice with Zoom and the webinar feature before we go to prime time with it.
Any other questions before we move to the next item? Thanks, Brett. Okay, student activity fee. Paul, you are up.
Thank you, Chair Eister. So we basically have the next two items are two student activity fee action items that we have for you. The first one, item E, is a student activity fee adjustment for spring 2020 in light of the restrictions that have been placed upon us to be on campus. And then the item F is we're asking for your approval for some changes for the student activity fee for next academic year. So for the first one, the change in the activity fee for spring 2020, as you all are aware, it's actually been just a little over a month ago, we made the decision that the instruction for the entire spring term would be in a remote setting, and with the restrictions in being able to be on campus that are put on us, there was a need to evaluate the fees that students are being charged. We looked at many of the fees that students are charged and made adjustments to those already. One of them requires board action to be able to change. And as per board policy 715, the Board of Education must approve the mandatory student activity fee and also must approve any adjustments to the mandatory student activity fee. So that's why we're coming to you today for this. So basically we asked the student activity fee committee, as per policy, there's a committee that meets, that determines this yearly. We asked them to meet to determine if there were any adjustments that could be made to the student activity fee in spring in light of the fact that there would be limited student activities on campus. They got the group together, they met on April 1st. They did meet virtually. And basically what they did was each one of the groups that receive an allocation from the fee, they asked them if they could modify their fee for the term and if they would accept a reduction so that because students wouldn't have access to some of those activities that would be planned, or if they needed to maintain their fees as established. Basically, there were about half or a third to half of the different groups that received part of the activity fee came back and said that they could voluntarily reduce their fees, and they made a recommendation as to how much they could reduce their fees by. So what we have presented to you is we are asking the board to approve the recommended change for the student activity fee for spring term and reduce that fee from $56.05 for spring term to $41.67 for spring term. That's a reduction of about 25%. Many of the groups or organizations that receive an allocation still had activities planned, some of them virtually, and there are also staff that are funded by some of these fees, so they didn't want to reduce the fees in order to still be able to pay the staff. So that's what we're asking for your approval of, is the reduction of the fee from $56.05 to $41.67 per credit student per term for spring term only. And we will make adjustments accordingly.
Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second, someone?
Second.
Motion made by Angela, seconded by Rosie. Discussion. Angela, did you want to say more?
I'm just a little curious about, I guess, sort of other impacts of the student activity fee. I guess I don't know what else at the college would be affected by the 25% reduction, but it sounds like all of the organizations participated in the conversation and agreed that they could manage a decrease. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. So this fee is for students. It's supposed to be for extracurricular activities that are being funded by a variety of different groups to enhance the students' experience, right? To create a greater sense of community, to increase their likelihood to be successful. And, you know, in light of the fact that we didn't have the same opportunity to provide some of these resources, some of these identity groups and clubs willingly reduced their fees. Some of them still had a balance, so that they were making do on the balance, and they wanted to try to just return as much money as they possibly could to students and not overcharge them.
So I think the queue is Matt and then Lisa. Does that sound right? Okay, Matt, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I have some clarifying questions, please, Paul.
Sure.
Some questions that I sent 7 days ago and haven't received an answer to, so I'm a little concerned. Number one, which clubs specifically volunteered for reductions as reported? And if I can just go down my list of questions. Sure. The report I received said, quote, many clubs. And athletics being one of those, but what other clubs expressed a willingness to absorb a temporary cut, and to whom did they communicate that sacrifice to? Next question, why is there a recommended partial funding
Okay, that's a lot of questions, so I didn't catch them all. So I'll get what I can, and then I'm happy to address each one of them. You might have to repeat them again, Matt. Sorry, I couldn't write them all down. So the willingness to absorb the cut. So every group that's on the list that's in the board packet here for you that has a reduction agreed to the reduction. Every group was contacted by the committee. They all agreed. Anybody that got a reduction agreed to have a reduction. And those communications were all electronic because we were practicing social distancing, and they were all communicated to the chair. And then the chair, the meeting was held via a Zoom session, much like we're having right now. Why were some funded and others not? You specifically mentioned a couple. I'll see if I can't recall them. I know you mentioned Black Student Union. The Black Student Union was working off of, they had overspent some funds, I think, last year and had a balance. And so they felt they needed to receive the complete funding allocation that they had in order to be able to address that particular balance. The APASU group, the Asian Pacific Islander group, they still had activities planned. That's why they are receiving some allocation. I don't know explicitly what those activities are right now, but I mean, I can certainly provide that at a later date. And that's why they have some. The other groups, the identity groups, MECHA, NASA, and others, SPA, those that have had their, I guess, spring allocation zeroed out, all volunteered to do that. And again, because there weren't any activities that were occurring that they needed those funds for. So rather than collecting the funds and just maintaining a balance, they decided to return them to the students. Other groups like Osberg that kept their full funding, they have staff that they pay for. And so that's in relation to that particular one there. And the same is true for the student, ASLCC student government operations. There are still tuition vouchers and stipends and things like that that are paid for the term, and they're working. So that's why they received those as well. And as you might be aware, recreational sports activities, athletics, the conference canceled all spring events. So there's just very little activity occurring. And again, the reason that there is some funds there is because they pays for some staffing that does some programming and things like that. And if you want to, I've forgotten other questions, my apologies, but if you want to ask me anything in particular, Matt, that I didn't hit, I'm happy to answer. You asked about community involvement. Oh, the meetings are all public. The committee is a group of 10 students, but the meetings are all public meetings. They're advertised, students can come and participate as they see fit, because it is a public meeting.
So I would like to suggest that we are getting close to, if not crossing the line into management. I don't know quite where our other board members are. Do we need to continue to get more detailed information on this? I'm not seeing much. Rosie,
Do
Lisa,
we
I
need
take it.
a motion on the floor?
There's no motion on the floor. Wait, I don't think there's a motion on the floor.
No.
There was a motion on the
Oh, there was.
floor,
Oh, I'm
so
sorry.
Angela
Okay.
made the motion and Rosie seconded it.
Thank you.
And I thought I was next in the queue.
You are.
Thank you.
Then Matt.
Okay. So Paul, so it was my understanding that every group had representation on this committee. Is that incorrect?
Yeah, that's not correct. So the group are groups of students. Some of them are elected students, part of the student body. Others of them can be students at large. This particular, as per the board policy, this particular group, I believe all of the 10 members of the student activity fee committee are student senators. So they're part of the student body. They're are not supposed to be, and actually they work hard to not have groups that might receive funding be decision makers on the body, just to try to remain kind of neutral in that regard and evaluate all of these fairly. So no, they're not representation from all the groups. There might be some overlap just because they're students and these are student groups, but not by design.
Okay, because Lainey Baylor, who is the SAFC chair.
Mm-hmm.
Does she work for Osberg?
I could not tell you for sure.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know, Brett, if you know. I'm sorry, I don't really know the answer.
That's
to that.
okay. And then the other thing I was wondering is you made a comment that the BSU had a balance, that they had a negative, I don't know the right word. So they basically had overspent, and so that they were not going to take a deduction, but it looks like they are taking a deduction here.
They took a deduction, but not the full amount. They still needed some to be able to balance. It's not that they had overspent. They had spent more than a third of their allotment or 2/3 of their allotment, in fall and winter. So they were going to spend less in the spring, and they spent more we allotted equally, but they had spent more than an equal allotment in the prior terms. But they were going to be able to work for their whole year budget, and they needed this to be able to balance that out.
So they're going to be okay.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah. Everybody's okay.
Great.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa, you're not done.
So I did just want to say that I do support this particular action, because I think that we're looking at a reduction in total student fees, which benefits students currently in this economic situation. So I do support this, and I appreciate the students groups who volunteered to do this, and that many of the groups who chose not to take a cut did so because of the fact that they employ students. And so I know that continues to benefit students economically. So I do support this, but I do have concerns about the process, and I do have concerns about some of the disparity I see in the budgeting. But I think that's maybe for another conversation.
Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I will not be supporting this. I believe, Mike, this is a conversation that is squarely relevant and prudent to have in regards to our fiduciary responsibility in regards to these Fund 9 accounts. And I have questions about the process as well. And it seems to me to be a less than equitable approach. I've said my piece in my questions to Provost Jarrell, and I would hope that in the future that there's a more equitable approach the students bring to this board. While I do recognize the time we're in and the willingness to make sacrifice, I believe that should be a shared sacrifice that should be far more equitable than than what I'm reading in our packet tonight.
So Marge or Paul, I'm trying to get an understanding of what kind of guidance. Is there a policy that describes what the student's role is in making these recommendations?
There's board policy 715. It's the board's policy, and it highlights the process. And we did follow the process according to board policy was followed by the students. And basically the board policy highlights, doesn't speak to the allocation of the funds, but speaks to approving the student fee, not the allocation of the student fee.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? Matt, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thanks. To Lisa's point, or her question that was really never answered. Just even the thought that there might be members of this body whose very entities are employing folks, and those that aren't employing folks are and whose student activities fees are well under $1 are the ones taking the biggest hit, should raise some very serious questions. So I urge colleagues to not support this. And if we don't support this tonight, then perhaps it goes back to the students to sharpen their pencil. So that's where I'm at. I think we can clean up this process and make this process a little more above board than what it's been in the short time that we've moved from elections on campus in which the students actually voted, the student body entirely voted for allocation of their student activities fees, to now a smaller committee that has crafted this particular proposal tonight.
Melanie, you're next.
So I do disagree with Matt a little bit. I don't think this is perfect. I also, when I saw some of the organizations that were not getting any cuts, it's a little hard to understand. I thought what Paul explained was very helpful, particularly if they have staff. I can understand that. I think at this point in time, in what is happening in day-to-day operations for any type of higher ed institution, it is important not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think that it sounds like there was a process that tried as much as possible to align with what the board expectations were. It sounds like each of these groups, for the most part, I'm sure there are exceptions, there always are, worked their hardest to try and figure out what they could fees for students. I think it's imperative to act quickly to try and reduce fees for students in order to hang on to as many enrollments as we possibly can at this moment in time. So I definitely do support the motion. There's always going to be lessons learned that we can consider later on down the road, if God forbid we have to keep doing these types of conversations. But at this point in time, I'm ready to move forward with it.
And if I could comment too, nobody's being negatively affected by the change. What the students have done is they've adjusted their budgets now because their activities have changed, their needs have changed as a result of what not being able to be on campus. So because their needs changed, they didn't have the need for the funds anymore. So rather than just carrying a balance forward, they decided to return some of the money back to students where they could.
Chelsea.
Yeah, I wanted to really echo what Melanie had to say. And also wanted to just point out that I think that we at this point as a board have had a pretty robust discussion. I am also in agreement with the concept that, maybe this process in the future, could be potentially a little bit more transparent, potentially, a little bit more making sure that all the right folks are engaged and are speaking their piece. But I think that administration now has heard that that is the will of the board, and then can make that decision moving forward if we have to do this again. So I think that we've given enough robust directive and discussion in order to move forward. And so I'll be supporting this as well as echoing what Melanie had to say.
Okay, I'm about ready to take a vote if, unless there's somebody else that needs to say something. Angela, I see you.
Thank you. I support this. I wanted to comment that sort of in the larger context, if we look at the next agenda item, which I'm sure we've all reviewed, there are some increases for some of the organizations that have taken a temporary spring term cut for the subsequent academic year, which I think is relevant to the sort of larger context of this question. I hear my colleagues advocating for a more equitable process. Having heard that the administration reached out to all of the sort of stakeholders, I'm wondering what that would look like. I don't see what, I'm confused about what would change.
So I would like to suggest that we have that conversation at a later date and go ahead and vote on this motion. I think that the whole issue that Matt and Lisa sort of supported is something that we should talk about, and you hit right to the core of it, Angela. But I'd like to suggest that we don't do that right now. Okay, so I will start with a roll call, and the motion is to approve the updated student activity fee for spring 2020 term. Lisa. I read your lips. I think you said aye. You muted yourself again.
I've been unmuted this whole time.
You just muted yourself again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Aye.
Thank you. Chelsea.
Aye.
Rosie.
Aye.
Matt.
Nay.
Melanie.
Aye.
Angela.
Aye.
Melanie, it sounded like you said aye. Is that correct?
Yes, I said aye.
Okay. I'm an aye as well. I do think that that we have hit on an issue that warrants further conversation by the board. I'd like to suggest that we put that on either a retreat or some kind of a follow-up discussion item. And so we'll go to the next item, Paul.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that vote. It'd be nice to get some money back to the students. Okay, so the next agenda item is similar to this one, except we're asking for adjustments to the student activity fee for next academic year. Per board policy 715, again, the board must approve the mandatory student activity fee and must approve any change to the student activity fee. The committee did meet this year. The policy calls out that the committee must be established by October and meet, and they have met, and they are recommending that the fee be increased by approximately 10%. That fee increase go from what was it originally, 5605 as it is this term, this year per term, to $61.52 per term next year. And you can see the adjustments in the board packet there that led to that fee amount change. There are no additional allocations, only just allocations, changes in some of the allocations to the current groups that were getting it. The process involved all of the committee soliciting from all of the groups questionnaire about what their needs are for next year, and if they're what they plan to spend their monies on that they're requesting, and are they requesting an increase or a decrease, and if they're requesting increases or decreases, what was the rationale for those increases or decreases. The committee worked to establish this fee, and they submitted their proposed allotments back to each of these groups. Each of these groups have an opportunity to appeal the decision. None of the groups chose to appeal the decisions and found the awards that were made by the committee satisfactory for them to do the work that they had planned for next year. So we're asking that the board approve an increase to the mandatory student activity fee and that they set that fee at $61.52 per term for next academic year.
Matt.
Does this restore the fees that were just recently cut 100%?
Oh, of course. So basically, well, the exception being the only fee that was really reduced was the legal services fee. They just didn't use all of those funds, so they didn't need that many funds. So yes, all of them are restored, and in fact, many of them are enhanced. Some of them by 200 to 300% in some cases. The increases are. There was an attempt to try to look at some of the identity groups and provide a little bit more equity among those groups that maybe hadn't been there in the past as well.
Lisa, you're still muted.
So the groups that I see receiving an increase are the vets student group, the GSA, SPA, BSU, NASA, METRA, and student government. And so all of those constituency groups are receiving an increase, which I'm very happy to see. And so I am very supportive of that.
Rosie, you're next.
Yeah, I just would like to observe that I'm not especially comfortable with the board delving into the specifics of this recommendation. I think there's a process for that. The process is student focused, and I cannot possibly know as a board member whether or not $4 or $2.70 is an allocation that makes sense for a given group. So I am supportive of adopting this because I'm persuaded by Paul's report that students participated in making this list of allocations, proposals, and there were no objections. And that's why I supported the last recommendation as well. This is a public process. Had student groups concerns about the process, there was ample opportunity to appeal to the board, to send emails, to make phone calls, whatever. So I'm not comfortable stepping past our policymaking role and reaching into the specifics of these allocations, but I support the recommendation as submitted.
So I see Angela in the queue. I'd like to suggest that we put a motion on the floor so we can continue the discussion. Rosie?
I move the Board of Education approve the mandatory student activity fee be set at $61.52 per term for 2020-2021.
Is there a second?
This is Lisa. I'll second.
Okay. So we do have a motion on the floor. We'll continue the discussion. Angela, you're next.
Thank you. My question is about how students pay the fee. I'm almost confident I've asked this question before. Can they pay it with Pell Grant, with financial aid, with other forms of federal student aid, or is this a cash payment that they make?
No, it's all part of their budget to attend. Yeah, it's paid per student, per credit. If they're a credit student, it's paid per term, and it's just part of their fees that go out initially with the bill.
Okay.
Other discussion. Lisa.
Will this new increase start in the summer?
I believe it starts in the fall. I'm not sure that they pay the fee in the summer. I can't recall off the top of my head. Yeah.
Angela?
a really good question, Lisa. Brings up another question. So if we're still having some, or if we're back in a situation where there's social distancing, where things are online, will the committee meet and sort of revisit this in the fall, or sort of any term where we have?
Yeah, they will meet if we ask them to meet, or if they decide that they want to initiate that as well. And I would recommend, just like we did for spring, if there is a likelihood that some of these groups aren't going to be able to deliver the services that they've asked money for students, I think we shouldn't be collecting that money from students to do that, right? If they don't receive the benefits. So if we do have some kind of modified campus, access for fall, we'll have to go back to them and ask if it makes sense to do some kind of allocation, or they may, since it's early in the year, they may choose to push some of that funding later and do more activities later in the year when we do have access to campus.
Marge.
So as we wrap up the discussion, first off, I want to thank you. These are great questions, not easy ones. I just want to stress something. This is student government, and we give them the autonomy to come up with their own criteria, come up with their own logic and reasoning. They have a Senate, just like you all have your own group. They challenge each other. They went through an enormous amount, because I got copies of the emails back and forth. So I tried to step back and not challenge it. I do respect, though, Matt's comment on fiscal stewardship of this board. And that's why I would be more than happy to get a little white paper put together, a little report on what the process is, what they go through. But I can assure you, because I've seen the appeals coming through. And in the past years, you may have noticed there were difficulties getting this to you, because the appeals just kept coming, and they hear the appeals back and forth. So I think your questions are great. I'm thrilled that you're questioning the process, but the operations is in the student government, in their hands. So I think what would be good for everybody is we'll get Mindy to write this up, and what ORS is it's not just us locally. We're following other larger governing bodies as we do this. So we'll put something together for you.
So I see that Ava is in the room. I wouldn't normally do this, but do you have a comment? Anything you'd like to add?
I mean, so even outside of student government, the chair of this committee is elected by the students, and 4 of the 10 seats are elected directly from students who run during our general elections. Just for clarity of where those situations are, I could answer some more specific things, but even if I also have some concerns directly with the process that is involved here, is absolutely a group of 10 students voting on how student fees should be collected and spent. So moving that forward is it's entirely students that have made those decisions.
Thanks. Okay, are there other comments, questions from the board? Thank you, Ava. Okay, I will take a roll call vote. Motion was made by Rosie, seconded by Lisa. Lisa, your vote.
Aye.
Chelsea?
Aye.
Rosie?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Melanie?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thank you all.
So, Greg, you are up next. Borrowing action item 10. We've got 10 minutes allocated.
Thank you, Board Icer. So we've been talking about borrowing and cash flow for over a year now at different board meetings and committee meetings. And so what you have before you is Lane Community College is going to participate with other school districts and going out with the Oregon Education District short-term borrowing. It's commonly referred to as a TAN pool. We did look at line of credits, and we looked at the CCF funding and projections. We kept that where it was, how we were required to. And so we're recommending, well, what we can legally borrow at a tax exempt, what bond council has said was $4,350,000. And that's what's before you tonight. We're estimated high on the cost at $70,000. The municipality market was fluctuating with the COVID, but that's a high estimate. I think in our budget, we even budgeted higher at $80,000 for next year in the proposed document. And so I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. And the resolution's there as well for an action item, so we can go ahead and proceed.
Okay, Rosie, are you, is your hand up? Okay, anybody? Questions? Melanie?
I just had a few. So I'm a little unclear about the maturity date. What's supposed to be the maturity date for it?
Let's see. I believe it's a one-year note. So anytime we do a short-term borrowing, it's 1 year or less. So
Okay.
it'll be before June.
Okay. I didn't know that. And then do we have to name who the district representative is in this resolution? It keeps referencing that person, but we don't actually define who they are. Is that something that the board needs to vote on who that person is, or is it just automatically Marge?
And I'm looking through it now. So the board has done the deputy clerks. So that would be Marge, myself, that would be Shane or Paul.
All three of you are the district representative?
Well, there were deputy clerks.
It felt like since there's a delegation to that person in here, it felt like we had to actually name who was going to serve in that role.
So I have signing, as deputy clerk, I have signing power, okay, privilege, whatever. And then I have secondary and tertiary, so behind me. But I think we could check with the standard about that.
Randy.
So Melanie, in section 1, which starts at the bottom of the first page.
Oh, I see it now. Okay.
There it is.
Got it. Thank you. I had not seen that the first time I read it. Thanks, Randy. And then
Randy.
My last just snarky comment that, we don't have to do anything with, but I kind of wish it were in here, is where in the very first whereas clause where it says, basically there's insufficient monies from tax collections and other available revenues. I would be totally fine calling out the state appropriations process in that paragraph, since that's at the heart of what is causing this, and it's not the kind of tax collections issue. We don't have to do that, but it seemed appropriate to add that there if we wanted to.
No disagreement from Greg or Rosie or Matt. Okay, any other comments? Okay. I can't remember. Have we made a motion yet?
No,
Are we ready for a motion?
I move the board authorize the college to borrow $4.35 million through the TAN pool program.
Second.
Who said second? Matt, okay. Okay, is there further discussion? I will call roll. Oh, I'm sorry, Angela, go ahead.
I wanted to say thank you to the administration, Greg and Marge, for responding to my questions in advance. I think that everybody on the board received those responses. Is that something that would be beneficial to add to board docs, or is that just sufficient to have been sent out to the board itself?
I'm sorry, send what out?
So I asked some questions in advance, which you answered. And so I guess my question is about, since I'm not asking those questions again in the public setting, is it?
We could put them up. We could put them up in the library. Sure.
Okay. So, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, Angela. We could put them in the minutes.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions before I call roll? Okay, Lisa.
Aye.
Chelsea.
Aye.
Rosie.
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Melanie.
Aye.
Angela.
Aye.
And I'm an aye also. Thank you. So we are at reports. And Ava, you're here. Have you got anything you want to say to us? 3 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Evening, everyone, and thanks once again. So I'm Ava Everett, your current ASLCCSG student body president, pronoun she, her. Just as sort of a general update as we all are working through this new paradigm that we're basically living in. Since the last board meeting, I will be perfectly honest that personally, I've had a severe decrease in personal capacity, worrying about those that we hold dear, long-term ramifications of our predicament, along with financial concerns that are drastically reduced. And many other students are feeling this exact same thing. So we're all currently in a level of mourning for the lives that we were all living around a month ago, where we, your students, we're getting ready to walk at graduation. And something that I think is really important, having said those things, is that we're looking directly at how we push forward. So we haven't been idle in this time either. So in partnership with, OSA and Osberg, we've been rallying support this month, doing different signings, talking to legislators about petitions to halt evictions, things like that, that governor passed in Executive Order 20-11 on the 22nd of March to make it so that we can make sure that our students have, housing security as much as possible. And then secondarily, even though the food pantry itself is closed on campus, we're providing a direct look at what resources are available. We have staff members who are working to make sure that we're gathering as much information as possible. And starting in this next week, we actually have all of our student senators on board doing listening hours, taking in questions and taking time to try and get information from students. And then secondarily, we'll be putting things out in the Titan Times and other places to make sure that we are doing what we can to help the students through this as well. So also to say, student elections were delayed in the last term, but they are now open, and we're going to be going through an entirely online process for student elections. And there are some few, things that we're looking at as we, the student government, were looking at originally scaling up. The creation of union of unions being fully functional. The biggest thing is we were looking at how we create a direct and full community. And so we started an integration process with the Council of Clubs to bring them as part of the student government as well, so that we made sure that communication went across from clubs to student government to all governmental groups, and then out to union of unions and everything else, so that there was an open communication line. And obviously those are a little bit stymied at our given moment. And then actually, just as something that I think is really important, and I'll be asking Marge to help us with this, Dr. Hamilton, is one of the last things that we were looking at when I originally ran in the student government was to put in place LGBTQ and trans-focused protections at the college, which currently from my understanding and looking at documents, trans and gender nonconforming students, staff, faculty, etc., aren't directly recognized as a protected class. And so we're looking at how we might be able to get the Diversity Council and the College Council to actually meet during this term so that we may pass these last few legislations or policies, because one of the things that I'm personally concerned about, and I know many people on my team are concerned about, are as soon as we as students aren't doing a lot of this push and a lot of this work, will these things fall to the wayside? So we want to, during our tenure here, make sure that we have an opportunity to push these things forward. And as always, I will be open for email. I'll be doing Zoom meetings that are open facing, and I would love if we could set up a bi-weekly meeting of board members, people within the administration and the institution and faculty, in sort of an open fireside chat with students to answer questions once every 2 weeks or so, to allow that to be a regular way that we engage our students going forward. Thank you all for this time, and thank you all for the work that you've been doing here.
Thanks, Ava. Adrian, are you on?
Mike, this is Donna. Adrian is on, but she's showing as muted. So Terry or Randy, can you unmute her? She's the phone number that's showing.
So Adrian, the phone in your lower left, there you go.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you so much for providing an opportunity for the reports. And
so Adrian, could you talk just, you're a little bit soft. Could you talk just a little louder or get a little bit closer to the microphone?
Sure. Thank you so much for providing the opportunity for the reports, and also for streaming the meeting online for the public. I wanted to share just a few updates regarding faculty work over the past few weeks, as well as other campus impacts. Faculty have been engaged in this tremendous effort, moving the majority of instruction to remote delivery, and have made huge sacrifices in terms of working during the unpaid week of spring break, working full-time for part-timers, working double time for full-time faculty, and trying to find a way to best serve students in a way that's equitable. And that has really been kind of one of the central areas of focus in faculty work, is trying to develop a way to meet student needs and maintain academic continuity while keeping a focus on equity. Throughout this time, I'd like to note also our appreciation for Shane Turner and his positive, productive role in labor relations. And at the same time, we're having a challenge. One contracted faculty member has an immediate family member who was impacted by COVID. So our hearts are with that faculty member. And we've since learned that the faculty member's immediate family member is improving in terms of health. So we find that very promising. In addition, I wanted to share a little bit about what the union is doing to support students and faculty directly. So this is both the local LCCEA and our state affiliate, the OEA. The OEA Foundation has expanded its guidelines for grants that faculty members can apply for to provide funding directly to students to help them with needs such as laptops, textbooks, and at this time, rent, utilities, or other basic needs, including medical expenses. The OEA has also established a relief fund for part-time faculty who have had class cancellations, and we have seen an increase in class cancellations, so we're, I think, very fortunate that our enrollment is a little bit more stable relative to some of the other community colleges. We've also put together an emergency fund for LCCEA members who are facing a hardship, which could be unanticipated medical expenses or financial difficulties due to class cancellations. And one of the ways that we're trying to keep in touch with each other is through our Cards for Colleagues program that we just developed. So faculty members can request that a card be sent in the mail to a colleague. And this can be for any reason, just because the faculty member is thinking of another colleague and wants the LCCEA to send them a card. So that's one of the things that we've implemented this term during this period of social distancing. I also wanted to touch on the classified staff layoffs. Faculty are deeply concerned about the layoffs impacting the 200 plus part-time staff whose absence leaves a hole in our halls and our hearts. These layoffs have rippled through campus, impacting not only the fabric of our Lane community and the livelihoods of the individual employees, but also critical student and instructional support. LCCEA stands in solidarity with LCCEF and will continue to advocate for sufficient staffing, especially in areas that directly affect instruction and student services. And on another sad note, we offer our most sincere condolences to staff colleagues, community members, and the family of Crystal Jones, a former student and public safety officer who died tragically, a victim of domestic violence earlier this month. And then the last topic I wanted to touch on briefly is enrollment and the college budget. So we are certainly facing a very challenging time related to the budget, but I do think there are some reasons for optimism. Credits are down 6.4% for spring. This is the figure that came out of IRAP on Monday. And credits are the factor that determine tuition revenue. So while we may have additional drops that will impact our overall FTE, our tuition revenue is basically already determined based on the drop in credits at the beginning of this week. It's also possible if other community colleges have enrollment drops that are greater than ours, that our allocation, our percentage allocation from the CCSF will increase. So we're optimistic that that may take place. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight. And I hope you're all doing well and staying home and staying healthy.
Thank you, Adrian. I guess we're at the section for board reports, and yeah. Are there board reports? Anybody have anything to say? Go ahead, Melanie.
I actually had a quick question on the enrollment report, though. Can we go back?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go. Yeah, any of the other reports, that's fine.
Okay. And this is just quick. It's just I wanted to clarify. So the numbers that are on here, are these then head counts or is it FTE?
So on the enrollment report that you have in front of you in the board packet, the table at the bottom of the page are enrollments. So these are students that are enrolled in a class. There's not always a one-to-one straightforward connection between enrollments and credits. And in particular, as Adrian mentioned, credits aren't down 10%, enrollments are down 10%. And the reason credits aren't down as much is because where we took a biggest hit, or one of our large hits, is in health and PE. Many of those are only 1 credit classes. So while we lost an enrollment, rather than losing an average of a 4-credit enrollment for a social sciences class or something, we only lost 1 credit for that. So they don't always track for that. They also don't always track linearly for FTE either. It depends on the number of hours that are in the course. FTE is a function of hours of instruction, not credits. And if it's a lab credit, it's more hours of instruction and more FTE than it is for a lecture credit. So that kind of varies that way. At the top is a projected what we estimate the FTE drops might be like, given this particular drop in enrollments. And those numbers are set by, I'm sorry, the numbers for FTE are set by the end of the 4th week. I mean, that's when we take our census, so to speak. So we're not there yet.
Any other questions on the enrollment report? I didn't call EF because I didn't see them on the on my window. Is there anyone here from LCC EF? Okay, so we have a facilities report and assistance to displaced 1039 employees. Comments, questions from the board on either of those? Okay, now we'll go to board reports. I would like to just say it is incredible to me that we went from mostly a in-classroom institution to an online institution on the turn of a dime. And when I see that how little we've lost in terms of enrollment and course credits, I'm just amazed. It's nearly impossible for me to imagine that the faculty and the administrators and all the staff were able to pull this off. And you have my admiration and commendation. It's really phenomenal. Lisa, you're muted, Lisa.
I'm getting there, Mike. So yes, echoing that, I just wanted to express my gratitude, appreciation, and admiration to the faculty, classified staff, managers, executive team, and to our president, Dr. Hamilton. I mean, tremendous effort, and just really very impressive and humbled by the faculty's move to online. They're working over spring break, the efforts that the classified staff have made, and the leadership that has happened. So thank you for that. And I also wanted to express appreciation for the assistance to our classified employees that were displaced or laid off. I think none of us wanted to see that happen. We know what a difficult economic time this is, but I was really happy to see that these employees would be able to take classes for 3 terms, and that it seemed like there was an increase in that area in response to employee concerns. So appreciation for that. And then I guess on a final note, I did want to recognize what Ava mentioned about trans and gender nonconforming students being an unprotected class within the college. And I'd like to request that we might be provided some information regarding that in a future board meeting at the policy level, of course.
Melanie.
So I also just want to echo everybody's appreciation to everybody at the college for how things have been handled in the past few weeks, and the ability to quickly adapt. And I agree with Lisa too in offering the additional support to the employees who unfortunately were losing their positions. I do also agree with Lisa on the training question. Since I read that, I've been trying to figure out, because I had remembered that we had talked about adding gender identity to one of our policies. I went back and figured it was BP 505 on employment. And so I definitely agree with trying to figure out how to address that as relates to students. So I support adding that to a future agenda as well.
Thanks. Chelsea, go ahead.
Yes, I'd just like to echo the sentiments of my colleagues that have been talked about thus far, and would like to add to the sentiments expressed thus far. Just to take a moment to really acknowledge once again and offer condolences to the family of Crystal Jones, and really acknowledge just the time and the moment that we're in. You know, we have been seeing a sharp increase in the number of domestic violence cases due to stay-at-home orders across the nation. So I just thought it would be really important to take a moment to just acknowledge that within the reality that we're living in. As someone who's experienced abuse in a relationship before, my condolences go out to Crystal's friends and family. And I think it's important now more than ever that we acknowledge that domestic violence is real, and we are needing to support organizations that support domestic violence survivors now more than ever.
Thanks, Chelsea. Any other board member? Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. the college's cultural competency and diversity awareness policy that was passed in either 2013 or 2014, the conversation at the time revolved heavily around sexual orientation and sexual identity. And so I'm saddened to see that 6-7 years later that we have to have this conversation, but I'm impressed by the empowering conversation, and I echo my colleague's sentiment, and I applaud Ava's directive or direction or suggestion for this board to take up language that protects our LGBTQIA community more clearly. So thank you. Number two, I also share empathy for our 216 part-time employees who were furloughed and laid off, and 150 of those classified employees, 66 learn and earn student workers employees, student employees. But this college has done the right thing by allowing for unlimited tuition for for this term, for fall 2020 and winter 2021. And I hope those students and those recently furloughed take advantage of that fully. Finally, well, and also not finally, third, Mike, I want to express my condolences as well to our fallen student and public safety officer, and to her entire family. Deepest condolences. We are 34 short days away till an election, and as we talked about in the middle of this board meeting, or at the height of this board meeting, the importance of voters standing, Lane County voters standing with this college to make investments in public safety, investments in our healthcare facilities, investments in technology, so Lane Community College can deliver world-class 21st century education experiences. As students who and community members from all over this county are returning to school, we're going to need voter support to say yes to the LCC bond this May. Vote early and volunteer often, and tell your friends, say yes for the future of Lane County, yes to the Lane Community College bond.
Thanks, Matt. Marge, I think it was in an earlier conversation I had with you today where you talked about furlough versus layoff, and why we made this particular decision that we did. Am I remembering that correctly?
So our goal is to keep our full and part-time contracted employees at work, and we're doing everything possible. We're being as creative as we can so that our employees are not affected, our full-time and part-time contracted, permanent employees, I should say. So now a furlough versus a layoff would be, the furlough is to keep the whole of the group. And Zach's done a lot of math on this. We haven't talked about it yet because we haven't really truly believed we have to yet. And we hope we don't ever. But a furlough would be everybody keeps 100 people, we all keep our jobs, but everybody is without pay 1 day, 2 day, 5 days, 10 days. So it's kind of like a day off without pay versus laying a person off, which is loss of a job. So if the world were to turn topsy-turvy and the college were to get into more fiscal issues, one would probably prefer to go furloughing versus layoffs. But we're not there yet. And I noticed, obviously university has been dealing with this. So there's a lot of different approaches. Sometimes a layoff is necessary if a whole category of people are just not being used. But if you're looking to save money, sometimes a furlough spread out across the whole could save jobs.
Does one of them qualify for unemployment and the other one not? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Yeah, Shane, I think, is better off to explain this. He's been giving me a little tutorial in this. Okay. Shane?
Yeah, so Oregon unemployment defines
a temporary layoff a little bit differently than a position elimination. As a part of their reaction to the COVID-19 situation, they loosened some of the requirements for people who had a temporary layoff. They don't have to go out and seek additional, other employment, those kinds of things. They just have to continue to check in with their employer. But the framework didn't work for us because it was just defining that as 4 weeks long. And we knew that this situation for us, at least given the governor's orders, would be longer than 4 weeks.
I see. Okay, I didn't mean to take us down a rabbit hole there. Are there any other board comments? Okay, are there any comments any comments from staff? Lisa, are you waving? Okay. So I'm about ready to adjourn, and then we will go into executive session. Marge?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to review the next agenda for next
Oh, I'm
month?
sorry. Yes, we do. That's
Okay.
right. That is the next agenda item.
Okay.
So items for our next upcoming agenda. Remember, we kind of focus on bond and budget, and we're getting close on bond. Well, I guess we're getting close on both.
Mike, point of clarification.
Yes.
Our next board meeting will be immediately following our bond. So just an FYI, this is our last time we're gathering pre-bond.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
So if I could suggest go ahead, Rosie.
I was going to suggest that rather than starting from scratch when we get to this agenda item, if it would be possible for administration to itemize some of the topics that you need us to process in a May board meeting as a starting point for discussion. I think it's hard for people to look at a blank piece of paper and say, gee, what do we want to talk about in May? That makes it sound like there aren't some things we must talk about in May.
No, I'm sorry. We have that, Rosie. Donna, did the board get a hold of that?
It's an attachment on that item on board docs, a draft agenda.
Yeah, because we've been giving it to you.
There it is. I see it. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
So I'd like to ask, where will we be at in the budget process at this point? We'll have had the public forum, and so it will be discussing projections and recommendations.
Yes.
Okay. Will we be having a budget meeting that evening with the budget committee as well as a board meeting?
Usually we have it before the meeting. Zach, are you there? Zach, you're muted. He might not be there, but yes, we tend, when it falls on the day of a board meeting, Lisa, we have it the hour before. And
Okay.
You know what, given your schedules, and I know how busy you all are, Donna will get that out quickly.
Okay.
My calendar shows a budget committee meeting before the board meeting.
Yeah. Would you prefer a 5:30 and a 6:30 rather than a 5 and a 6, given some of your day obligations?
What I have for the 20th of May is 5 o'clock budget committee meeting and a 6:30 board meeting.
Matt?
Yeah, considering there's no commuting other than from the couch to the office, I think that starting earlier works just fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Lisa, was I seeing something else from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Rosie said. I have that on my calendar as well. I just wanted to confirm it.
Okay, so we'll assume 5 o'clock on the 20th.
Right. So I know you have a copy of it, but it looks like at next month, we'll be looking at COVID updates for our continuity plan, what's going on at the college. We'll finalize the bond. Obviously, we'll be discussing the results of the bond. the budget projection recommendations. And then what I'd like to bring to you is just a review of the process for self-evaluation and president's evaluation.
Thanks, Marge.
Okay.
Okay, now I think I'm about ready to adjourn this meeting so we can start our executive session.
Mike, if I could just add
Go
something
ahead,
to
Matt.
that. We received communication from Joan today in regards to the Small Business Development Center and the work that the SBDC is doing in regards to supporting local businesses and providing access. If we could weave that into that 3A discussion, that COVID-19 business continuity update, I think this board would find that helpful.
It's a nice idea. I've seen some of Robert's YouTube videos. He's done a great job.
Yeah, and both the Springfield and Eugene Chamber have done an excellent
Yeah.
job keeping folks up to date as well. So a really good conversation about local businesses and how we could be a supportive partner here.
Well, I don't have a gavel here, but I'm about ready to call this meeting to adjournment. Oh, sorry, Angela, go ahead.
Thank you. I know that as we're approaching May, we're still very focused on budget and bond. However, having heard many of my colleagues express an interest in taking up a trans protection policy, I sort of just wonder how we make sure that that doesn't fall off of our radar and at what time period we will be taking that up.
So Marge, I'm sure that's on your list.
Yes. Sooner than later.
Melanie, was I seeing you waving? No. Okay, now I'm really getting ready to adjourn the meeting. So Donna has sent an email to all of us with the telephone number of the, to get into the executive session. Does everybody have that number? Anybody not have it? Lisa, do you have it?
So I have it. Is it just a phone call? We're not. It's
There's
not
an yeah, we're not going to be on because it has to be secure. So it's gonna
okay,
be
so
on
it's
the
just a phone call. All right, great.
Mike?
Yes.
Is there a way for the news media to call in? I guess that's a Donna question. If we have any news media?
Yes, if we had any, I could give them the phone number. How will we know if we have any?
Well, I would think they would be at the end of this meeting. So if there's nobody who you might want to, is there a way that they could contact you?
Yes, they could email Donna right now.
Okay.
Right.
Good, that'll suffice.
Okay, well, I'll watch for it, but I don't see anything yet.
Donna, how about if you announce your email address just in case?
Okay, then yes, the news media can email me at zmolikd, ZMOLEKD @lanecc.edu.
Great.
Thank you, Randy. Matt.
Considering that, Mike, we may want to at least pause a couple minutes, 5 at the most, before we dive in case anyone does reach out, that there's ample time to get them connected.
Okay, so how about if we say we're going to convene at 9:03?
How about
8:47, right?
Well, 9 should suffice. That's plenty of time.
Okay, if you got enough time, okay, 9 o'clock. Okay, we're adjourned and we're going to call in at 9 o'clock. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.